Hello, everybody. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be diving into WordPress Core, and I picked a very specific ticket for us to go through today. Now, I just real quick want to introduce the live stream to you. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is each week we're going to get together and we're going to, sorry about that, I had some feedback from watching the stream. We're going to be working on something in Core together where it's doing triage, working on testing, working on a patch, reproducing a problem, whatever that's going to be, so that you can see how I work and I can answer your questions and so on in real time. Okay. If you don't know me and if we haven't met before, hi, I'm Tonya Bork. It's very nice to meet you. You can learn a lot more about me on Twitter, LinkedIn, my blog, whatever, as well as on WordPress itself. Okay, so I'm an engineer, I'm a leader, I'm a teacher, educator, and so on. And I was also the triage lead on 5.6 and 5.7, and then mentoring others in the space to be triage and test leads. Okay, that's me. So if you're here with me, you can jump into the chat and say hello. I see some people that have jumped in. Hello. Some folks from my last company that I was at. Some very good to see you both. Hi. Now, what you can do during the stream is if you have a question, what I want you to do is just add it to the chat, but could you do me a favor and put a Q in front of it? And that's going to draw my eyes to it. Okay. And then that way I know, hey, we're not just chatting. She has a question or there's a question for me to answer. So if you could do that for me, I'd really appreciate it. Okay. All righty, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. So I've got a screen here I'm looking at. Every now and then you're going to see me look over and I'm looking at the screen that I'm going to be showing you here in a minute. And I'm going to walk you through the ticket first. Okay. And then we're going to talk about the problem that's there. And then we're going to reproduce that problem, which is something that you want to do when you're doing a manual test. Also, if you're writing the patch for it, right? You want to go in and create the code that's going to fix it. You're going to want to reproduce the problem first and ask questions about it and so on so that you really understand what's going on so that then you can go and build the solution for it and the automated test for it too to validate that, yep, it was broken. Now it's fixed. Okay. Now on the manual testing side of things and the QA and triage side of things, we go in, we look at what's there. We look for, are the steps to reproduce it there, which in this case they are. And if they are, then we try to understand it and see if there's more testing information that's needed. And then we can actually go through a process, which we're going to do today, go through a process that lets us see the problem in action, okay, and then go and test that, oh, hey, look, the patch actually works the way we expected. Now, through this process today, I picked this one specifically. Well, one, Peter and I worked on it. But two, it has some advanced PHP information in it, which I think can be valuable for you if you really want to understand how memory works and objects work in PHP. So this gives us a chance to not only do some triage, testing, QA, also dig into the code and start to understand how that works too. Okay. Hey, I know. What do you think about that? Well, we still talk all the time in Core, don't we? So nice to see you. Yeah. All right, let's get rolling. I'm going to switch on my other screen, so bear with me here for just one moment. Some new software I've got to get used to. You know how that can be, right? Okay. Now, this is the ticket. Matter of fact, let me put this in the chat for you too. Hold on one sec. That way you can find this. Okay. All right. So there, if you want to click to it and go look at it, or else you can just watch me here on the screen too, and we can just work through this together. By the way, this will get recorded and saved on YouTube, so you can come back to it anytime. That's one of the nice things about YouTube streaming is it persists. Okay. All right, let's talk through this ticket. All right, so It's been around for a long time. For the first thing, 7 years. Wow, long time. Alrighty. What we want to do is read this, okay? We can see that the steps to reproduce, and there's some code here. Now, this is telling us that this particular problem probably is a bug in the code itself. It's not necessarily visible when you're looking at it through the UI. In other words, the UI would then mean the way users are looking at things in their workflow. Instead, this is something in the code, and it's been there a long time. Okay, just so that you kind of know. All right, let's read through this together. All right, see if we can understand what the problem is, and I'm going to walk you through that. Then I'm going to give you a snippet of code that we can put in as a must-use plugin, and we'll reproduce the problem, and then we can talk through that. Okay, why is this a problem? How does the snippet work? And so on. All righty? Okay. Hey, I just noticed Rita just popped in. Hey, Rita. Haven't seen you in a long time. Thanks for joining me. Okay. So let's take a look. Steps to reproduce. Now, it's kind of a common way to name things. I know this name isn't necessarily the most intuitive, right? So $UID. What that means is user ID. Now, this number 3 specifically on this person's machine had a user with an ID of 3. Okay, this is going to be different potentially on your machine. I just kind of want to let you know, because remember, IDs are uniquely assigned when we create users, right? Okay, because that ID, why? Let me ask you, why? Think about it. Well, that ID is the key inside the database for that record in the database, okay? So it's unique to that user's information in the database itself. Okay, enough on that. All right, so we have a user ID of 3, and we'll change that when we actually test this out, because yours is going to be different. All right, so it's saying, okay, so that this user ID for this demo should be a subscriber, okay? And then they're going to set this particular user who is a subscriber to be the current user. So although you're logged in and you're testing this, you can change it, and it will change the current user to be some other user. And I'll show you that too. All right, so then we see there's a global current user. Now WordPress uses this super global here, okay? Right, so this global for us has an instance of whoever that current user is. We're going to come back to that here in a minute. This is a WordPress function, get_user data. So with that user ID, you can go get the data for that user. Okay, so we've got this here. And then let's keep reading to see if we understand what's going on. So from user data, now also contains WP instance, but it's not the same instance of the one that's up here in the global. Wait a minute. Get current user data. You gave it the current user, but pulling it from here, from this particular function, get_user data, gives you back a different object instance. Still the same user, but you've got this object, and they're not the same object. Uh-oh. We're going to talk about why that's important and how PHP handles objects. Okay, here's a spoiler alert. These two objects, even though they have the same information in them, are not the same. They exist separately in the symbols table that's inside of PHP itself, under the hood, if you will. Okay, so that's a problem, because changing state in one, some property in one, doesn't change the one in the other one. Two different instances. Well, I already talked about it, so I might as well just keep talking about it. I'm going to flip back over and talk right into the camera now. How about if I use some visual aids? I find when I'm teaching objects, this really helps. Think about it in the context of the real world. I got a marker and a marker. They're both markers, okay, right? But they're different colors, but they're both markers. They are an instance of the same class. But because they're objects, I'm able to take the different properties and set them differently. Oh, okay. Two different objects. They exist separately. So if I write with this one, I'm not writing with that one. And I'm getting black out of it, not red. Okay, does that kind of help you to see the difference in objects? So if we think about this, let's use the markers. And if we think about, which one do we want to use? Let's say this black one here is for the global. Okay, that object. And the red one is for when we run it through get user data. You get back a different object. Uh-oh. So if you go to change the property of, let's say, this one, and you say, okay, now I'm going to make you an admin. Ooh, let me get this back on camera. Technical difficulties. If you make this particular one, say I'm going to change it to be, I don't know, I'm going to make you an administrator now. That changes this one, doesn't change this one. Two different objects. You see the problem? Uh-oh. All right. That's why this one is a really fun type of ticket. The solution was pretty simple, but the concepts behind it are kind of tough. And that's another reason why it took so long to fix it. Okay, so let's get back to it now. And then let's see. Right here, we can see user data. Okay, we already read that part. Now we can say fun time. So what's happening here is he's showing an example of if we set the role to administrator, what's going to happen. And I think the best way to see this is to actually see it in action. Don't you think so? Because these concepts are kind of abstract. So we actually need to see it happening to be able to see, oh my gosh, they are not the same object. Okay, so how are we going to do that? Spoiler alert, I already built a little piece of code for you. Let me go find that. Okay, here it is right here. And I'm going to give this to you here. I'll link it in the chat so you can just go grab it too. All right, so this is a little gist that you can grab. All right, we're going to use this particular gist, and I'll show you actually working on the code here in just a second. But what it's going to do is walk through the steps that reproduce what that ticket was talking about. And then we'll print results. You can see here we've got a print results. And what that's going to do then, I'll just scroll down. This might be kind of small. Here, let me bump it up so you can see it. I have a feeling that's a little too small to see. There we go. That probably helps a little bit, right? Okay. So when we go to print results, I built a little table here so that we can see things kind of stacked. What is the object's ID? And this is a PHP function that lets us look at the object's ID in memory. And then we can compare that to be able to see, wait, do they have the same ID or not? What do you think? Yeah, I think you already know the answer to that. All right, how are we going to test this? Let's go through that right now. All right, so I think the easiest way to test this particular one is to use an environment like local. Now, why do I say that? Why not just work through the terminal, go and pull down the changes from GitHub and work in WordPress.-develop? Well, the reason it's going to be is this. Okay, I'm going to flip back over. You can do that, and I'm going to show you other times when we run streams together to where we will work that way, right? We'll go and fetch, we'll merge, we'll open up different branches, we'll apply patches, we'll do different things. And this one we're not going to because this ticket's closed. The patch is a PR that's already been merged and deleted, so that code's gone now, right? We can't just go and pull down that PR and apply it. If it was in process, we could. In this case, it's already gone. Bye-bye. All right. So what we'll do instead is this. We're going to pull this open in local. All right, let's go ahead. I'm going to open up local here. And now we wait for it to load up. I've got a lot of things running on my machine, so it might take a minute here. Okay. If you haven't used local before, you can go and download this. Really, really, really super easy to use. And when I'm doing manual testing, a lot of times, this is the way I'm doing it. I'm not always, depending upon the change, I'm not always testing it down in the terminal and working with different branches in Git itself. Instead, I'm doing it this way because it's really easy to do things like change the PHP version and see how it runs on like 7.2 versus 8 versus 5.6 and so on. Okay, just a little tip for you. All right, so what we're going to do is I'm just going to start this up. Let's get rolling. Okay, so it started. I'm running 5.7.1 on here. I've already kind of got things loaded up. Yeah, I did a little bit of pre-work so that you didn't have to see me type everything, but I'm going to go ahead and open up PHP Storm. Give me 1 second while that loads. Get a drink of water. All right, is this kind of making sense to you so far? It's okay to ask me a question. I'll guide you through some things here with it. Okay, that's something different I was working on. We don't need that. Bye. Hold on 1 sec. Here we go. Okay. Now, I'm going to open this up so you can kind of see where do you put this file. I gave you that gist. Well, what you want to do is go into WP-content, okay, and then you'll put it into the MU plugin. So if that doesn't exist yet, go ahead and create it. And then the way I like to work is I have one file per ticket, with the ticket number being the file number. And that way I can quickly go back and see. When I'm done testing something, let me show you this one I was doing. I just put a quick return on there so it bails out. Doesn't even load the code that I was testing. So just kind of a tip for you. If you're doing some manual testing of things, this is how I work in it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close that out. Here's this one. All right. Okay. Let's see if I put this into presentation mode. I'm wondering if this might be a little easier for you to see on the screen. Let me try that and see. Ooh, God. Yeah, that's quite a bit bigger, isn't it? Okay. Let's just try that and see. If you don't like it, let me know in the chat and I'll get rid of it. Okay. All right. I think I'll talk to you about what this code is doing, but how about if I show you the result first? Yeah, I think that might make a little bit more sense to do that first. So what I'm going to do is come back to here and we'll go ahead and refresh. And now let's talk about what we see here on the screen. I need to bump this up so you can see it. Hold on. Oop, that's too big. All of it's not on the screen. Okay. So the first thing that's happening is it's you as the current user because you're logged in, which right now is me. I'm user 1. Do I have admin rights? Thumbs up. Yep, I do. Okay. Now, if we look at my current user and we use it by get user by, this is the object ID, 832. Okay. Now look at the global. Here's the global. What's the ID? 540. They're not the same, are they? Right off the bat, we can see the problem. Okay. But then let's go ahead and do what the ticket said to reproduce. Okay. So we see the problem immediately, but let's go ahead and keep going here. Now what we're going to do is change to a different user. And if we come in here, and let me just show you. Whoa, yeah, that looks nasty. Let me refresh. You can create a user by going in, add a new user. I've set it to subscriber. You see that right there, right? Okay. And just put in like, I always put in like tester 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. And then the email, it just be a fake email. I always put like tester2@test.com. We don't want to email anybody, just a test. Okay. And when you create that, don't send credentials and you're fine. All right. So just to kind of give you a clue at how to set up for testing. All right, let's come back. All right, so we're going to switch now to this second user. Now, how do I know that's ID 2? I can look right here. Can you see that? Yeah, that's kind of small, isn't it? Hold on. Well, let's bump it. Yeah, that's still small. All right, so user is 2. User is up there as one of the optional parameters, right, in the URL. And you can see that. So that one is number 2. Don't get confused by the fact that I called this tester 2. That may or may not relate to the actual user ID. Depends upon how many other users I have and what their IDs are. Did I just confuse you? I hope not. All right. I'm going to put this back a little bit here. Okay. Now let's come back to here. I want to show this to you real quick and see what you think. All right. So we're switching to 2. Does this person have admin rights? No, shouldn't, because this person's a subscriber, not an admin. Make sense? Okay. Now we're going to do the same thing. So we got user by, get user by. This user is 307. Okay. Now here's the global 833. And then I also wanted to check one more thing because it was mentioned in the ticket. Let's go back and take a look. By using update user and get user ID or get user data. Sorry about that. Okay, so we've got that one right here, get user data is 831. So if you look at this, all 3 of these objects are all different IDs. Actually, I need one more. Same user, tester number 2, is represented by 3 separate objects. They're not the same objects. Just like these markers are all different. Even though they're markers, they're all different. So if I change this one, I'm writing with it, does not mean I'm writing with these 2. As the ink goes down in this one, it's not affecting these 2 because these 2 are separate objects. Uh-oh, we got the problem. Okay, I think I beat the marker analogy. Took that one to a new level, right? Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go and change that user, which is user number 2, ID number 2 in my case, and we're now going to say you get admin rights. Okay. So by doing that, notice, wait, I changed you to have admin rights, but you don't have admin rights. Oh, okay. Now the objects didn't change. Okay, let's go look at the code that's driving this, and then you can kind of see what's going on here. All right. So the first thing that we're going to do is go get the current user. When it first loads up, who's the current user? You are. Yeah, okay. So then I print that out on the screen. Current user ID is, and does this user have admin rights? Okay, let's go back and take a look. Actually, maybe I should do this. I'm going to go back to here. Hold on one sec. I want to get all this on the screen so you can see it. That might help a little bit. All right, there we go. Okay. So here, I'm going to scroll. And we can see current user, you, right there, right? Okay, we can see our thumbs up. So we went and printed the results, which gives you all of this stuff. All right, let's go look at print results. That just happens to be down here. Sorry about the scrolling. That probably just hurt your eyes. Okay. Yeah, so we've got a question here. Could you blow up it just a little bit larger? I'm kind of wondering if you can see this or if you need it even larger than that. Let me see. Can I make it bigger? That's a very good question. I think I might have to change a few things. Let me know if you can see this right here or not. This over here I think is kind of small. But let me know if you can see that. If you can't, I'll see if I can somehow go and manipulate this, okay? I'm wondering if you might have been referring to the actual gist that I had instead of this. Okay. All right, coming back to this. All right, so what we're going to do then is print the current ID, user ID, okay. Has admin rights. You can see that right here. Then we come down. Here's our little table. Now, have you ever seen this particular function before? Okay, let's go and take a look at it. I'm going to go ahead and close that. We'll come back over to here and we'll do PHP like this. And now that's going to take us to the manual. Okay, we can go to the manual here. Okay, now this is in PHP. This is a PHP internal function. And you have to have at least PHP 7.2 to use it. All right. All right. Hey, good. Thanks for letting me know that it looks good. Yeah, it does. So you can see it fine too. Perfect. Thank you for letting me know about that. I was hoping that that was going to be the case, that by using presentation mode, it would just go huge. Okay. All right. So if we look at this, I'll put this in the chat too, so you can get that. Okay. So what this is going to do is, let's just take a look at it here. I need to make this larger as well so you can see it on the screen. So it's a function that returns the unique ID for that object. This is going to be the object in memory. Okay, so that ID is always going to be attached to that object, and it's the way that PHP can look things up in memory. So when you're using this, you're saying, give me that ID. And it's a very easy way to be able to check the different objects and make sure, is it the same object that you're using or different objects? Because the ID should be the same if it's the same object in different places. Okay, did I say that right? I hope I did. Okay. All right. So that ID is going to persist the whole time that that object stays in memory. But if you destroy that object, then the ID is released and another object can use it. That's basically what this is saying. Now, if you've ever seen on Know the Code, where I'm teaching about the symbols table in PHP and how your symbol, what you're calling your object, right, the variable, that symbol and how that relates to the memory itself in the computer and how those are wired together. So with an object can have different symbols, but it's always the same object as long as we haven't broken something here, which in this case we have. We have different objects, and I'm going to explain why, so don't worry about it. We'll get there. All right, so we're going to use this function. Let's come back to the code. Hold on one sec. Okay, let's see. So what I'm going to do is pass in, when we run that function get user by, we store it in a variable and then pass it to this function. Go get the ID for that object. All right. Same thing here with the global here. Get the object's ID. Cool. And I'll scroll to here. And when we use get user data, same thing. Kind of easy. It just keeps repeating, but at least it's showing you on the screen each of these functions or the global variable itself, what the object ID is. Okay, what do we do now with this? Well, hold on. I need to back up one second. I just kind of jumped ahead, didn't I? I've got it. Sorry that I just scrolled really fast again. I got to remember to hurt your eyes doing that. Okay, let's come back up. I got to here and showed you the table, the print results, but I didn't go back down the page. So let's just do that real quick right now. Okay. Okay. So changing to a different user. Remember in the ticket, it said, and I tried to put those comments in from the ticket, that we needed to change, and it needs to be a subscriber. So that's what I'm doing, is tester2 is ID 2. I set that user to be the current user. All right. And then I'm going to go and get the user by that ID. So now give me the user object, and that's what happens. And then I'm going to do it from a different function. Same thing, same user ID, give me the user data. These should be the same object. Okay, and if not, we got a problem. Okay, and then print the results. And we already went through print the results, what that does. Now, what did the ticket say to do next? Let's go back to the ticket. It said, okay, we want to, so here we've set, then what we want to do is set the role. We want to change from subscriber to admin and see what happens. So let's go do that now. I got to pull this back up again. I'm going to just scroll down a little bit. Watch your eyes. Okay. So now we're going to change to the different user, which is right here. That correlates to this code right here. Okay. We're going to set the role just like that was written in the ticket. Set the role to admin. Then we print the same results. Okay. And then I added one more thing. I set the role back to subscriber. Why? Because I didn't want to have to go in to the back end every single time and do that, because I'm going to forget and then I'm going to get the wrong data. So I just set it back before. And then I'm exiting here, which means PHP stops executing, because I don't care about loading the rest of the page. I just want to just stop and analyze what's going on here. All right. Okay. Techie Press. Yay, I'm glad. Thanks for letting me know that you can see the screen. It's really important that you're able to see. Okay, that's the snippet of code. You see the results on the page. We have now validated and reproduced the problem. All right. We talked about that these are different objects. We may not understand how that's happening, but we see that it is happening. So I think to be able to understand why it's happening, I think it's going to be easier to actually put the fix in, show you that the fix works, and then we'll talk about the fix. And then that will show you the problem and why it was a problem. You want to do it that way? All right, let's go ahead and do that. Now, with this one, the fix is so small that it's just easier to just go ahead and put the fix in. Okay, so how can we do that? What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this out of presentation mode because I'm not seeing, and sorry, I haven't played around with this enough to see how to move around with different things. All right, we're going to go back to the ticket now. And in WordPress, the way that this works is, yes, we can use GitHub, but that's just a mere copy of the actual repository for the code, which exists in SVN. Okay, so the code itself, I'm going to scroll down, and we can see down here, here's the commit. So whenever you see in this is the change set. This is the, if you can think of it like a PR that gets merged, and then there's a commit when you squash it all down, and there's a commit message that goes into the Git history. And SVN, we use change sets. Okay, so that's the number of that change set that got committed into the SVN repository. All right, and then there's a description. The props are all the people who touched or communicated in this ticket. So if you were doing some triage and asking questions, or doing a code review, or doing some manual testing before this got committed, your name would be listed here in the props. Okay. Hint, hint. It's a way to become a recognized contributor in Core and get that Core badge when this actually gets rolled out in the release that it's targeted for. Hint, hint. Okay. So let's go ahead and pull this open. I'm going to show you the code. Change that. So here it shows it touched 1, 2, 3 files. The bottom file is tests. Here, I need to make this bigger, don't I? Okay. The bottom file is tests. Okay, so we're going to ignore that right now. And we're going to scroll back up, and we see that there's a change that's made in source. WP includes user.php. Okay, and there's another change that's made in WP includes pluggable.php. Well, watch this, the magic of being prepared. Now, pluggable, user. Okay, let's look at pluggable first. Right here is pluggable, so we need a global user, and we need this code right here. Now, here, because this is so small and not much code, it's pretty easy to copy this little chunk of code and put it into the local code, okay, in this file, in this exact spot, and then comment it out, reproduce the problem, uncomment it, see the problem got fixed. It's a very simple way of being able to do this type of back and forth testing. And then also being able through local, let me just show you here, to then go and change the PHP version and test it on that as well to see, well, let's make sure that it runs on 8, that it runs on 7.3, that it runs, whatever. Okay. You got the point, I know. All right, so this code, that's exactly what I did. Is I took that code and I copied it in here, and then I commented it out. All right, so we're going to uncomment that now. Boom. Okay, that one's ready now to test. And then we're going to come over here to user, and user, let's go see what that one is. Okay, I'm going to scroll down. I'm not concerned, and you really shouldn't be concerned either when you're doing manual testing of the docs, you know, the doc blocks and things, or even inline commenting. You're testing the functionality of the code. Okay. All right. So let's come back here. We need a global, bring that into scope so that we can use this global variable. Okay. And then here's the code. Okay. Refresh. Basically what we're doing here is we're refreshing this global instance for that current user. Notice we set it to null. And then running this particular function is going to refresh that. All right. So let's go put that into our code. Okay. And if right here, you can see there's the global user up there. And then down here is the code. And I'm just going to uncomment that. All right. Now, this code is now ready to run. Okay. So it's this code, that one, and this one. What happens when we run this? Let's try it and see. Okay, let's come back over here. Now I'm going to refresh. What's the first thing that you see? I'm going to go ahead and make this bigger. Whoops, a little too big. Hope that you can see all that. Matter of fact, how about if I just, can I scroll this up? No, if I make it bigger, I bet I can. Yeah, okay. Now I'm hoping that you can see the whole thing by making it a little bit bigger. What we see here is you as a user, your object ID in PHP memory in the backend, right? In memory that it's managing for you, that object ID is 540. Think of that 540 as like pointing to that object. This object points to here in the memory stack in your computer. Okay. Little pointer, 540. I want that one. All right. Then when we switch to tester 2, still doesn't have admin rights. Okay. Right? Not an admin yet. Subscriber. Then what we see is here's this object. Notice it's a different object. But then when we make that person an admin, notice that the thumb is up now. Now that person is an admin, and notice that the object ID is now the same. Right? All the same. Before it wasn't. Yeah, see that? Okay, it now works the way it's supposed to work. Woohoo! Yep, exactly. They are the same. Exactly. And yes, you're absolutely right. This is the object's reference ID. It's a unique identifier to point to where that exists in memory. This object lives in one space Whoops, I got the wrong color. Hold on. I had to reach way over there. This object for user number 2 lives in one space in memory that's a separate space than this object, which is me. This one is 540, me. This one is user 2. That one is 829. And they physically live in different spaces, if you can think of a memory stack in memory. So if you know a little bit of computer science, you know that these are memory stacks. They're in different locations. You can point to them. And I don't care what your variable is. You can have a bunch of different variables. It's one object. It should be one object, right? This is a user. This is a different user. We don't want a bunch of different objects representing me, this user. Want them all the same. Woohoo! Yeah. Alrighty. Okay, so the fix works. Why? Why does the fix work? Well, let's go look at it. This is where we can start to see that as a manual tester, you don't necessarily need to know why the fix works, right? And from a QA perspective and so on, you can just come in and validate the code does what it's expected to do. It fixed the problem. It's repeatable, right? Works on my machine, works on your machine, works on the web, works wherever. Repeatably, it fixes the root cause of the problem. Now, for those who want to know more about the PHP side of things and wants to be able to dig in to understand what's going on behind the scenes, we can talk about that. Okay, so let's take a look here. We have a question. Hold on. I'm going to pull this up and then we'll talk about it. Before changing the code, changing the role to admin didn't reflect on user 2. Will it reflect on another user? Well, let's create another user and see. You want to try that? Okay, let's see. Matter of fact, I think what we'll want to do is before and after state. You want to try that? Okay, man. Let's leave it as fixed right now, and then we'll comment it out to see that it didn't do it. So we need to add another user. Okay, so add new. This one will be tester3, and the email is tester3@test.com. If I can spell. 3, okay. No, we do not want to send the email to their account because it's not a real email. All right. Let's see. Yes. And then here you can put anything in because this is your back end, right? It's just sitting on your machine. You can just make that a week. It doesn't matter. All right. And let's go ahead and add. Okay. So now I've got another tester here, and this particular tester is, if I go to this one, boop, is 3. Who would have thought? ID 3. They're just kind of lining up. Don't always expect that, by the way. Let's go to our code and make that change. Okay, so if we come back to here and we say instead of 2, let's make this 3. Okay, and then let's go and test it. That's a very good point to make sure that it works on others. Okay, we can see here with the fix in, what do we see? Same thing as before. We have a user ID that are all the same for the same user, but different from the other user. We see that nope, does not have admin rights. Now we're going to give this user admin rights, and yep, has admin rights. Okay, now let's take the fix out. Let's validate that we can reproduce it before. Boy, I hope that's the case, or else I'm going to look silly, aren't I? Okay, let's take this out. So we're going to comment this out, and we're going to comment this whole thing out. Save, and let's refresh. Now what we see is it's reproducible with a different user. Changing the user to admin didn't work. The object IDs are all different, right? So before the fix, same thing, whether it's user 2, whether it's user 3, or whether it's myself. So it's 3 different users that we tested it on. Doesn't work. We put the fix in, and bam, it works for us. Let's do that again. Whoops. Don't delete the code, silly. Okay, I'll come back over to here. We're going to do this one and save, and let's refresh. Matter of fact, let me do this. I want to keep that one so that we can see before and after state. Okay, pull this down and squish. Can I get it all lined up? Okay. This is before the fix. This is after the fix. Okay, do you kind of see now how what the problem was before and what the problem is now? You might be thinking the IDs don't really matter, but the way that you do see it does matter is when you try to change something on that user. In this case, we wanted to make that user something different. Change the user to an admin, didn't work, not an admin. Changed it over here to an admin, worked. Okay, well, what's really weird about this particular bug is it does update in the database for them. It's just depending upon what you're using to check is where you're going to have a problem. Okay, because all of these objects are different. So when we do what is it? Hold on. Current user can. When you check that one, that's when you'll start to see the problem. Let's go and see. Why is that? You might be wondering. Well, let's go and see. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Oh, it's down here. Here it is. Okay, let's see. I'm going to put this back in presentation mode so that we can see. I'll scoot this over so it's a little bit bigger. I don't want you squinting and hurting your eyes. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we're going to do a WP get current user, and then you change the cap on that user. Okay, so here, get WP, let's go see. Or actually, don't change, you're checking if it has. Let's go check this one. And we'll go see that it's another internal, and now you're kind of going down the rabbit hole. What gets used? What's getting used here is the global, okay? The global variable is getting used. There we go. All right, so we have, if that's not empty, and it is an instance, you're going to return that global back. Okay, that global itself is the same thing as the $ globals, and then the array and current user. Same thing, just different representation. Right, well, we know that that object ID was different than when we ran it through the other functions. So that's where we were getting the problem. The global is not matching up with the other functions. Whoopsie. Okay, let me get back out of this again. Okay. So I'm going to come back over here. Let's see. So does user 3 have the same IDs as 2? Well, we could run it with multiple. We could say, let's do 2 and 3 and see what happens there. Let me see if I can do that. If they would have different object numbers, but let's go ahead and just run it. Let's see. I'm going to do, well, we just kind of copy this. This one. Copy, and we'll come down here. So we're going to do 3 of them. So that one's 3, this one's 2. All right. What can go wrong when you're doing some live coding, right? Do you remember, is the fix in or not? Let's go see. Oh, I lost my fix. Hold on. I think it's down here. Here it is. Right here. I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of that one. And for this one, oh, darn it. Hold on one sec. I got to try to remember where that's at. Give me a moment. That one is this one right here, and we're looking on about line 1590 or 1589, 1589. Okay, here we go. So then we just comment this one out as well. So now we're back to the fix is not in the code. Okay. Excuse me. Gosh, that was rude. Coughing. All right, let's see what happens. Refresh. The fix is not in the code. Did I do this wrong? Oh, okay. Do I have this in here twice? No, I don't. All right. So can the IDs be the same? Yes, because we're overriding that variable. Now I'd have to change that variable here. And right now what I'm doing is I'm overriding the same variable. So it's getting rid of the old one and bringing in the new one. The way that you could also test this is to put this in a function and then call them separately. And now they're different variables with different scopes. But that's what's going on there. Okay. By having that may or may not make sense to you. Here, notice I have user ID. I'm using it again here and overriding that value with a 3. Up here, I have get_user by that variable, and then I'm overriding it down here with the information from 3. Does that kind of make sense to you? So the variable or the object for number 2 is now gone. The way that I wrote the code here. Could they have separate objects? Absolutely. If they can continue to exist and persist, then yes. So like if I change this to be number 3, number 3, number 3, number 3. You think I can get them all? Let's see. Number 3, number 3, number 3, number 3. I know I'm going to miss one. Hold on one sec. Okay. Oh, down here. Number 3. All right, save. Let's try it again. I hope I got them all. Let's see. So we've got object ID of 307, come down here, 540. So now they're different. Okay, so you can kind of see that. Now let's go and put the fix back in. I hope that makes sense for you. Let's put the fix back in. We're going to uncomment this, uncomment that, and save. Okay, and then refresh. And now you can see I've got 829 for the one, 275 for the other one. Wait, and 540. So 540, 829 is number 2. Number 3 is 275 for the IDs. So I hope that that kind of answered your question there too. All right. Now let's take a look at the fix. Let me see. What's happening here is this. Get the user by. So you tell it a field that you want. This isn't big enough, is it? Sorry about that. Let me make it bigger. We're just going to look at this piece first. Okay. Here we go. So get user by is a field. And sorry, you pass it a field. In our case, we're passing an ID and the value that we wanted. And then what it's going to do, we have our global here. It can get there's a, well, we'd have to go and look at that. We're not going to do that right now, but we're going to get the user data. And then what it's going to say here is if the current user, right here, we're going to check, does this user even exist? If the current user, that's that global variable, if that's an instance of WP_user, okay, that's the class that defines what a user object is. If that is an instance, it'd either be null or this. Then we check, does its ID match this user ID? Are the two, is this the same object? If yes, return current user. If no, create a new instance of that class. There's the problem right there. Do you see it? This keyword means, okay, so right now, this is the user that I want. Okay, I have it. It's in global state. Yeah. So current user up here, this current user is this, and this is the one I want. So before we put this fix in, let me get the fix out. so you don't get confused. What it was doing was it was saying new instance of that class, which does this. Boom, creates a new one. Uh-oh. Two different objects. Uh-oh. And every time you called it, two different objects, and you get another one. Same user. Uh-oh. That's what was going on. So by putting this in, what we were doing then is saying, okay, let's just check. If the global instance, that user is in the global state, if the IDs match that you're asking for, just give back the global. Don't create another instance. And that way, what you get back instead of this, when you wanted this, now what you get back is this never gets created. You just get this back every time, because already exists. We already created that object. It exists. Just give me that one back. Bam. Pretty simple, but kind of mind-blowing. Yeah, it just blows your mind, doesn't it? Now, let's see. Casper asked something here. Let's just put this up here. Hey, Casper, how are you? Good to see you. So the fix is in use to say that the outcome of something such as a game or contest is controlled or affected in a dishonest way. You know, that can be true. Absolutely. So, okay. Oh, I'm glad that my explanation and showing the three different users made sense there. Really great. Okay, so that's the first part of the fix. Let's go look at the second part of the fix. How about if you need to get the global, right? Let's say it isn't, and we're skipping past this point. The global needs to be refreshed. Well, we just created a new user. We've got to do something with that global as well, and that's what we're going to be doing here. So the other one, let's see. I got to get out of this presentation mode. I've got to find an easier way to flip back and forth. So any PHP Storm experts out there that know how to quickly flip back and forth, let me know. I probably need to put some sort of key binding in to make that faster. All right. Let's see. The other one was in pluggable, wasn't it? And let's see. Where was that at? It's right down here. Nope, that was that one. This one's in user. Okay. I'm confusing myself. All right. So here's the other fix. Clean user cache. Okay. In WordPress, to help with performance, when we pull data from the database, what we do is we cache that. Okay. It's in-memory cache, but it's caching it away so that we don't have to hit the database every single time. Makes it faster. Stick it in this cache, depending upon what sort of caching system you have, right? Object cache, memcache, whatever that might be, then you'll be able to have something run a little bit faster. Even if it's in memory, that is still faster, because if you call this function over and over and over again, you don't want to go hit the database. Instead, hit the database, stick it in a cache, pull from the cache every time. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. So what this is doing is it's cleaning the user cache. When that happens, the code that got added was this, and I'll bump this up so you can see it. Okay. So if the current user's ID equals this user ID, which if we scroll up, I'm on the wrong screen. If we scroll up, the user that you've passed in to get cleaned, if that equals the current user, then what we do is we clear out that global to null, and then we go ahead and go back through the WP set current user. Just by doing that, the global gets reset again, right? So it goes and says, oh, okay, I've got to reset everything back up. Now everything's back in sync. Okay. So that's how the fix worked. We needed to refresh the global state, which is what this code does. And we needed to not create a new instance of the user when we were looking for that information. So if I go back, get rid of this, and I looked at this one again, right here, We don't want to do the new user when we're calling this. Just return the global state at that point. Now everything's all synced back up again. So we've got something, hey, yeah, so I hate globals. The thing with globals is this. Globals can be awesome to persist, and then it's available everywhere. However, I know you've heard me say this before because we've talked about it. Globals, because you can use them everywhere, you can also change them everywhere, and you can also overwrite them and make them no longer valid. So you're right, globals can be very dangerous. They're also very usable and very powerful when they're used in the right way. Now, in Core, they're used a lot. They're all over the place. So they have a purpose. Instead of having like a function that could then go and read from it and then store it like in memory somewhere and manage that memory. So then you can come in and change that global state, but you got to go through some sort of API to do it. That's a little bit more code and management that would have to be in there for all these different globals. And instead, the way that it is in Core, remember Core is very, very old as well. Way back in the old days of PHP. So this has always been something that's used in Core, and it's something to always be aware of is the difference between the global state and these global variables, and making sure too that you don't overwrite them in a way that could break things, but also making sure your global state matches what you're actually doing. So I hear your frustration there. Okay. Now, that was a long session on how to do this type of testing. What do you do next after you've done this type of manual testing? What do you do? Well, what you can do then is go back to the ticket. Okay, we're going to go back to the ticket here and put in your results. How did you test it? Did you validate that there was a problem? And did you validate, how did you validate, and what were the results of putting the fix in? And you can share that information here with everybody. And that way, anybody else who wants to come and test it, or if there's an issue in the future, what's this change? What just happened? This change set, how was it tested, and so on. They can come back into this thread because this ticket will persist. They can come back and read the information to gain that context again. Okay, so when you're doing manual testing, which we have test scrubs each Friday, I invite you to come so that you can do this kind of testing with different things. And we'll also have some testing scrubs that will be coming in the Core Dash test coming up. I haven't scheduled them yet, and the team hasn't yet, but we will be having some to where we do some triage and things. But when you get involved in this type of contribution, you can come in and add your comments at how you tested things and what were the results. Okay? And I invite you to do that. Yeah, contribute to the project. Let's see, we got another question. Okay, so what if the IDs global and current are not equal in the last mentioned function? Well, let's come back. I've gone ahead of you because there's a big delay between me talking and YouTube. So you may have asked this 15 seconds ago, and now I'm already past it. So sorry about that. So I'm going to say maybe here is what you're talking about. Here, if they're not equal, then it's going to create a new user and go through the process. Okay. Here, if they're not equal, then it's just not going to refresh the global state, right? Because it's a different user. They're not the same thing. You're not talking about the same user. It's just going to skip that. So that's why we have this if statement that's going on here. Okay. All right. Any other questions? I'll sit here a second since there's this big lag going on. Are you ready to contribute to Core? Now, I think too, part of the answer that was being asked here is validating that, right? Run a test to where you ask for it to do something and see if it changes it. We could write tests for that. I think that's a little beyond what we would do today, but if you wanted to test, like if you just call this function directly and pass one user in, but the global state's something different, so switch to a different user, what would happen? And you can go through and actually test that. I've kind of given you some tools there to go and get this set up and run it for yourself to see what would happen. Okay, well, if there's no other questions here for me, what you can do then is you can come back to this whenever you want to get that workflow and that approach again, right? Okay, I'm going to switch off the code. And hold on, switch that off so you can just see me again. Hi. So what you can do is come back to this video and all the ones that I'll be recording so that you can come back as a reference to how we went through this again. And then as you want to go in and start to contribute to the manual testing and the QA processes in Core, if you have questions, ping me. I'm there to answer any of your questions, as well as you can ask anybody. Come into the Core-Test channel. Make sure you join that. You can ping me directly or just ask your question directly there, and we'll guide you through. And so, you know, Piotr, who's here today on this, is the 5.8 test lead. So anything for 5.8, he can answer for you, or him or I, since I'm mentoring on this as well. So just so you know that you can come contribute and you have support to be able to get contributing. I want to thank everybody for joining. It's been really great to see all of you. Yeah, even though it was, you see me and I just see your text across here, but getting a chance to talk with all of you was really great. I hope that you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in Core. Bye.